Alec, how you doing? We're gathered
Oh,
here at just about midnight, right? Right around
it's
midnight.
yeah. We're here. We're here. This is what we're doing right
This
now.
is our
We're
ritual. Every week we come together.
we're midnighting it up. Yeah.
It's
To those
seven
before,
thirty
to
or
those
8
after.
p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's for us. So,
Yeah.
uh,
To those before, to those after,
yes, and so on and so forth.
and so on and so forth.
Um, okay, so if you're new to the channel, we've reviewed all the Mike Flanagan series so far, from The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and now we're here to The Midnight Club. Okay.
The Flaniverse. We're in the Flaniverse right now.
Yeah.
That's what this is. They have that whole collection. That's a
Yeah, I
collection like
saw that.
listing on Netflix, which is like, oh, that's kind of cool.
As they should.
Yeah. Honestly, makes quality stuff.
Um,
I have yet to watch really any of his films, but I'm very
yeah.
interested. We should definitely get to some of those on the channel at some point. But
Yeah.
um,
But this is like a staple. It's like we know Mike Flanagan series comes out. We gotta watch it. We gotta review it. You know.
yeah, so next year I believe The Fall of the House of Usher, I believe it comes out.
That's what it's called.
Um, mhm. It's based
Wh-
on Edgar Allan Poe short story, I think.
The Fall of the
Um,
House of Usher.
yeah,
Oh.
it's an Edgar Allan Poe short story. Or it's based on that. I don't know. I don't know any more about that. It's going to have some of the same actors and actresses that he always
Okay.
has in all his projects, which was a delight in
This is
this
a
to have them show up.
smorgasbord of Flanagan
As,
actors and
yeah,
actresses.
yeah, right, because this is really based on it's more focused on the teenagers, but
Mm.
despite that, he still was able to hit the everyone showed up in some form or another, or I should say not everyone, but like lots of his bit characters showed up in a form or another during all the different short
And it
story
was always
segments,
a
which was
treat.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was delightful. Um,
And we did get the girl. I suck with the names, but the girl from Midnight Mass was in this one as Sandra, as the religious girl.
yes,
So
Viv Keen.
no,
Oh
actually, I was
no!
talking
Oh
about
no!
the
No!
young religious girl,
The young
but
young religious girl. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, you're right.
yeah,
Yeah,
she was
yeah,
the
you're right.
like the surviving girl from Midnight Mass.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we have Bev Keane, who was in a minor role in Haunting of Hill House, and then she was Midnight Mass, and now she's here. Who almost
Yeah.
by her very nature was like, I got bad vibes immediately. Just
Yeah, I got same bad vibes instantaneously. I was like, I don't like this.
there's clearly
um,
nothing shady here,
yeah.
right?
So
But yeah, I
for
mean
those of you unaware, so
we got a fun new cast too. I want to say that too. Though. It's not
yeah,
just the old Flanagan actors and actresses. So
yeah, the all the kid actors were all like, if I say kid actors, I feel like they're most of them are in their late teens, early 20s, but they were all like really good. Um,
mhm.
they all like I can't really think of like a specific weakness among them really. They all hit the roles that they're in super well. So so where to begin? I mean, I guess summarizing. So
Just
this is based on the Midnight Club is based on a book by Christopher Pike, who was a children's or young adult. I don't think the YA genre existed back then. He wrote like horror novels for younger audiences.
okay.
The Midnight Club being one of them. Um, and it's this basically the Midnight Club is about a group of teenagers who are all terminally ill. They live in a hospice house together where they're sort of able to come to terms with everything and kind of live among people that kind of understand the positions that they're all in. But in order to sort of help them process and uh, I mean, heck, even cope, they secretly have formed this club that they meet at midnight, and they tell scary stories to each other to sort of help them through whatever they're going through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the general premise. I think the short story is basically the same thing, or not the short story, but the book that he wrote is basically the same thing. But from what I
Okay.
understand, this actually implements a lot of his other books, like a lot of the other books that he wrote in the 80s and 90s. Like some of the stories that the kids tell are based on those books. So
Nice.
and so yeah, it's pretty heavy. It's very like right off the bat, you're kind of introduced, you're thrown in to that this is going to be some heavy material in this show. Not that there aren't lighthearted moments, but it's yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy at times for sure.
So what I would ask to start things off for our initial thoughts, I would say from the past three series, we we've had like high opinions of all of them. I'd say. So would you say this one is like, did he do it again, or is it different? What is your?
It's a little complicated, I think, because like we're so this is something I didn't know until partway through. Um, this is the first season. That was something that was not clear to me when I started watching this. This is the first season in an intended multi-season show.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I didn't know have any hint of that until the very end. I didn't know. So.
yeah, I knew because there was something I was looking something up like one of the actors or something, and then there was just an article saying like it was like Mike Flanagan says that Midnight Club is intended for many seasons, and I was like,
Mm.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and then by the time, so I because I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I guess maybe they'll have like other kids or something like that. But no, I think the intent is to continue on with the same sort of cast, but potentially. And especially when you come to the end, there is a lot of stuff that's unresolved at the end.
Mm.
Not everything. I mean, some stuff is kind of tied up a little bit, but there is definitely room still for a story here.
That being said, if it was like there was never gonna be another season of this show again, I would still be satisfied with what we got here. My
I
personally.
I would say overall, yes. I think because the way it ends is like has a little bit of a twist, but it sort of reframes or recontextualizes everything uh, to a degree where it's like, oh, okay, like that's what the series was then. It was about like these two people's like histories and their sort of clashing ideals is ultimately what it came down to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, um, interesting stuff. That the fact that it is intended to be a multiple season thing,
Just
which is different.
new
All of
for
his other
me.
ones are basically limited series or mini series, basically.
And I did
So,
enjoy them for that reason that they were like unique in a sense. There's like
mm,
it's contained, and that's why I felt like the writing was always so tight with those because it's like going into it. It's not like we could go on for 5 seasons. Like you got this many episodes, he's gonna tell the story in that many episodes, and so that's why I
right,
think they did so well, or he did so well with those ones.
right.
But
Now, this is, I would say it's probably on the weaker side of things in terms of like it. I don't want to come down on it because I still have a very I couldn't stop watching the show. It was really really good.
yeah,
I
I
really
loved it.
enjoyed it
I loved
and I loved it. But it's not quite as high as the highest highs of some of his other shows. Um, but that's okay because it doesn't have to be. This is a much different show than those. Um,
it.
and
True.
that's a good thing, and that's kind of what I actually kind of appreciate it because it wasn't like trying to like scrounge up the same sort of vibes as his other specific shows because this is like based, well, I guess the other ones are based on other source material too, but this one is like really based on this guy's work, and it still has the same extremely strong character driven performances. um it it's not like as scary or spooky, I guess, but I would still say it is creepy. There are definitely elements of it that are definitely like eerie
Yeah.
or creepy. Um, particularly with a few of the stories that the kids tell. And I would say even just the overarching through narrative of the season was all pretty creepy at times
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah,
but
for sure. Because it's like there was like one or two times where actually it shocked me. Other than that, it's like creepy vibes, which I don't mind. And I liked how there was like this underlying like mysteriousness about things and like creepiness
yeah,
in general. Um, that I think that helped the show a lot. But then also, I think the I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about their different stories, like how they're all telling stories each episode, basically. But I thought it was really fun because it pretty much let like the creative freedom just like skyrocketed because you could have fun with it, and the stories didn't have to be super like perfect, uh, cleanly written stories, and they actually work that into how they present the stories. It's like they'll have their own little flaws or things they do just because they're kids telling these stories, so they'll do wacky stuff with it, and
yeah,
it's not to its detriment. It's like fun storytelling along the way, and you can do. There's so many different styles with just how they did those stories. That was fun.
yeah. No, I agree. I actually really liked that element in particular too. The fact that the stories were flawed, and because that just allowed it to have fun like moments where different characters would interject and be like, "Come on, that's stupid," or like,
Yeah,
"No, you got to
they
change like you
rewrite it
got to
real
change that
quick.
around. That doesn't make sense," or like angel porn again, like
Yeah,
to
and then like the character not knowing anything about football, just like it's coming up
yeah.
with
Oh, that
sports
was
names.
really
Yeah,
funny. Yeah, he's just yeah, it was very funny. It added a charm to it, and certainly, like you said, the creativity just was almost limitless because yeah, we had like a slasher film, we had like uh, like a science fiction movie, we had sort of like a supernatural thriller, we had like a psychological uh, twisting narrative.
a
Um,
noir
yeah,
like
the noir
detective.
that was really goofy and fun. That was a lot. That was really great.
Yeah, yeah, and they just like really like went over the top with that, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
and you can never just be like critical of these stories because it's like, well, it's the kids telling it, so it's almost like you're developing these characters through how they're telling their stories because in all their stories there's some like element of themselves that's in
yeah,
it, and a lot of them are like a reflection of their actual story and how they got there, things like that.
right. That's the thing. I think the thing that I liked the most about it was that like I was reading some reviews. People are pretty split, I would say, overall on this one.
Hmm.
People don't really. I don't think the people that don't like it don't like the fact that it's like, oh, the narrative takes a screeching halt, and then we do this whole story for like 20 minutes to a half hour, and it's like, no,
Uh,
like it's not coming to a halt. Like, don't you
yeah,
understand like what this is saying? Like, don't you understand like what the stories are doing? Like, they are developing the characters more.
and
Um,
personally I was always excited whenever we got like a new story starting. I was like kind of
yeah,
with them. I was like, oh yeah, another story, let's go. And then they
yeah.
got me with the to be continued on a couple of those. I
Oh
was like,
yeah,
dang it.
with what's his name's to be continued.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are yeah. I was always like, oh my gosh, that's a great one. The slasher
yeah, with
the slasher
Dusty.
book film. Yeah, with Dusty.
Also,
Yeah.
interesting thing that I think I knew this just as I was about to start watching the series. I had heard that they got the record for most scripted jump scares in an episode for that first episode, where they
Yeah.
just like they just did over the top like jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. Obviously not intended to actually scare you, but for the purpose of
Hmm.
the story. So I thought there was a random fact going into it. I didn't expect it in that fashion. When I heard that, it was like, oh, they have a record for the most scripted jump scares. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
and but the whole thing about it is it's making fun of jump
Yeah.
scares. It's like that's the whole thing about it. Which is funny.
And it's cool. It's
Um,
almost Haunting of Hill House esque in how like there's character focused um, I don't know if entire episodes were character focused, but at least they'd
Hmm.
have the whole stories. You'd spend a lot of time stopping out on each character, and you get
Yeah.
to like focus on each person's story. And I thought that's fun. I always liked that element. Um, and like I said, I was excited whenever they had a new story. It's similar to elements of like Lost, how they do like flashbacks, how like, it'll cut out from there, but it'll like form the character. Even in
Hmm.
Lost, I found times where it's like, oh, here we go. It's like a character I don't care about. We have to go through a flashback, and it's like that kind of, you do get annoyed sometimes if you're like in an interesting part of the story and it gets a flashback. But with this,
Yeah.
is like I was always here for the story. So
Yeah, it always felt like organically part of it because well, for the most part, it didn't happen every single time because sometimes they were telling a story outside of the actual club itself, but for the most part, you kind of knew like, oh, okay, we're gonna be this is the part
mm-hmm.
where this is the part of the episode where um but yeah, no, I agree. I thought just the overall narrative and story is like because you also mentioned flashbacks. So the through narrative also has some flashbacks sort of showing the past of what happened the at the home. I don't remember. I can't
Yeah, I
remember
don't
its name.
remember
It's,
either.
um, but because that's sort of the one kind of weird mystery where the our sort of our lead character, um,
Ilanka.
Alanka, who shows up to the house, is the most recent addition to the home. So we're sort of introduced to everything through her shoes, through her eyes, and we're kind of along for her sort of exploration of the what's going on because she initially finds this place by trying to search through for like cures for the I don't remember what type of cancer that she has, but
Hmm.
um, and she finds out oh someone was like cured who went to this place. So um,
Julia Jane. She finds.
Julia Jane was cured. So she's very interested and intrigued and sort of like delving into like what happened here. And there's like already as soon as she shows up, there's already like this weird kind of vibe of like the head lady is kind of like overly protective about like information about the past of stuff that happened here. She's like, yeah, I don't know about any of that sort of stuff, even though she clearly does.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
She gave
and
weird.
Alonka's not.
She gave weird vibes from the beginning too to me. Like that
Yeah,
lady always gave weird vibes.
yeah, yeah. So, but then Alonka keeps having these weird visions of like the house in a completely different time period, and she keeps seeing this old woman. Um, and it's really those scenes are always really those are really effectively like creepy.
Yeah, the old
I would
woman.
say
Yeah.
those are the closest the show probably gets to actually legitimately getting like scary, like the like kind of in the classic sort of Hill House kind of way, where sort of the creeping dread when this old woman shows
Mm-hmm.
up, um, and that's yeah, that's just great. All those scenes of when that happened, it's like I like the like not necessarily knowing when it's going to happen next or like what sort of scenario or what will be revealed in this one. And sometimes nothing is revealed. Something is it's just it happens and then she passes out. Um, so
One thing I did appreciate, and it was like going into when we were first presented with this house. You're immediately thinking like it's like Bly Manor, Hill House. So when to see
mhm,
a house like this, it's like okay, this whole thing's gonna be. It's just like ghosts. Are any of these people real? Is it all gonna be
right,
like an illusion, like messing with your head kind of stuff? But I like that it's kind of a lot more grounded in a sense that you can actually come to trust what these characters are saying, and she can actually confide in them, and like it's actually intrigue, and she's actually getting everybody involved. It's not like
yeah,
she's seeing things and she's the only one that sees things, or like everybody looks at her like she's crazy, where everybody turns out to be ghosts or like some crazy stuff like that. It's like actually just got a group of people, and there's actually just in this house that has a history to it
Yeah.
with some weird elements, and then these visions that her what was it Kevin was that the boy's name?
I think that's a boy. I think that's his name. Yeah,
They both
something
had
like
like
that.
dreams
Kevin or
similar with an old lady and an old man.
yeah,
So it's not like she's on her own in this horrible place kind of thing. I like that.
right. I mean, the whole purpose of the Midnight Club is the way they see it. So like we've already sort of explained. Well, what they're doing is that they're basically kind of explaining, telling stories that are sort of at them processing like what they're going through emotionally, mentally, that sort of thing. But their guise is we're gonna create some ghosts. Like that's the thing. It's like our stories can maybe in and of themselves like speak to the beyond in a way.
Hmm.
Um, and so their pact of the Midnight Club is that if when they die, um, that they will send a sign from wherever they might be. Um, and nothing's happened so far. And then,
Yeah,
but as we um, yeah, that's what they want to do. So
yeah, and I personally I love the dynamic between the group, and I love how it's like how that's like become their family, and the whole.
mm,
Um, I think it makes a lot of the scenes really effective. Like I was getting emotional at a lot of the scenes throughout this show, and I love that it's like this is the most ride or die friend group I've ever seen. You know, it's
yeah,
like down to like we're willing to do a blood oath, like we're down for anything for each other. You know.
yeah, yeah. So we can go a little bit more into spoilers now, but yeah, there's yeah they some of the history of the house includes like cult rituals and stuff, and we don't have to get into the nitty gritty details because it's some of it is a little complicated because of how it's told over the course of the series.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, the at one point there was the like Julia Jane had apparently undergone the had found the diary of Athena. And Athena was this girl that was involved in like a really old sort of cult like thing that went on where they're invoking a lot of like the Greek uh, the five sisters or the four sisters, five
Five
sisters. I don't.
sisters.
And so they're invoking this sort of Greek sort of ritualistic sacrificial sort of ceremony to try to prolong or save their lives. And so they try to do that to I can't remember her name. I can't remember like any of their names
Anya.
now. Anya. They try to do that to save Anya, which is just like, man, it's like wow, like they're going this far. I was like, that's a lot. This show's going into like they're participating in a like a yeah blood ritual basically.
And once we were going downstairs into this creepy lair and like doing blood
Yeah,
oaths, I was like, okay, this is taking like a creepy turn, even more creepy
yeah,
turn. I'm like, okay, Alonka,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm totally on board with you now.
yeah,
We'll see how it goes.
yeah. I mean, she's like, yeah, well, we have nothing left, and I'm like, yeah, but like, is this the what you want to do? Also, I just want to say, always, always, always bothers me when in these things,
Hmm.
anytime anyone's slashing their hand, why are you slashing your hand? Why are you slashing this part of your hand? Do you know how long that's going to take for it to heal? Do you know how painful that's going to be to heal?
You
Use
don't.
the back of your hand. It doesn't stretch as much. You don't use it as
That's
much.
not how the
It'll
ritual works.
it'll hurt. No, that it okay. Maybe this particular ritual, whatever. I'll give you granted, but like in everything, people are always like, it's like, why do you cut there? You've got veins exposed right on the back of your hand. If you cut there, you're gonna get just as much blood, and it will heal much
It's
easier.
not as
That
effective.
always
It's
bothers
like
me.
you grab it and then you close the palm of your hand and the blood comes down. That's why it's so hardcore.
So the rationale that I use for like why would you cut the palm of your hand, and that's like for things like this, and it's like that's to show like I mean it. Like, this is how
Mm.
serious it is to me. Like, I know it will be painful. Like, I know it's gonna take long. I could cut the back of my hand, but this is what it means. But like, honestly, it's just a trope, and I hate it. I really don't like it.
I found.
And but
Well,
that's just a pet peeve of mine. I
yeah.
know that's me. But like, I hate when people do that
You know what? Like that.
in like in in movies and TV shows. It's like, dude, just use the back of your hand. Like, come on.
It's not as hardcore. It's just not. It's just not as good of a look to have it and then let the blood drip down here. It doesn't look as good. Um,
It does look good. It looks cool. It's
it
like, dang, now
doesn't.
they got a
No, you
slash on the back
squeeze
of
the
my
palm of
hand.
your hand and let the blood
Well,
run through.
in this, yeah, it was like it was kind of hardcore because they were squeezing it out. Yeah,
But like,
but
I think this demonstrated um more than anything how like committed these friends are, not only to each other, but it's like once they got in there, everybody was fine with it. There was no one who was like really nervous about cutting their hand. It seemed like everybody was just
yeah,
like they got this actually sentimental thing. 'Cause, you know, you would think when someone tells you to bring a sentimental object, you'll be like you'll go like 3 tiers down from your actual most sentimental object. But these people were actually like taking
yeah,
valuable
like the
things.
most,
They were committed. They had a
yeah.
story with it. They were like impassioned, and then they're
Mm.
just boom, do it. And it's like no problem. Like once they're in something, they're in it. You know, even Sandra was like very hesitant to participate in everything because of false idols, things like that. But even she comes down. She said she'll participate in her own way. In her own way, is full on cutting her hand and in the thick of it. So
I guess she just followed the don't cause your would doing this cause my brother or sister to stumble? And it's like, well, I guess I might as well go along with it. You know,
mm,
it's like that is kind of wild
just doesn't
that
look
she just
good.
went along with it anyway.
And I mean, knowing what we know about
Went
how
along with a pagan ritual.
knowing what we know about that mistress lady, now her reaction like makes more sense. Or like,
Oh yeah,
or I mean,
totally.
I was gonna say it would be much more worse if you were just like a normal headmistress and you come down and you just see your group of students doing a blood oath and like what the hell is going on down here
Yeah,
and you don't
but
know
like
this
her
place
like
is.
but her actually like flipping out as hard as she did is like, yeah, because as it turns out, as you find out at the end, she was Athena,
Mm-hmm.
and she was the poor lady, or rather Athena. No, she wasn't Athena. She was the daughter of the woman who killed all the people in like the 40s or whatever. I think that was the
Hmm.
reveal. I mean, I don't remember if that makes her Athena or not. I can't remember. Again, details blend together when it's over the course of a long show. I can't remember the exact details. So like, don't take this as gospel. But like, basically the reveal is that she was somebody who had like she watched her mother do all these cultic ritual stuff to like save her, and it was all like horrible, horrifying. She killed like a bunch of people to do it.
In very similar
Um,
fashion to Julie
it,
Jane now.
right, and Julia Jane then you takes Alonka's kind of willingness to go forward with this stuff. The lady that we know, what did she Shasta?
Yeah,
Um,
Shasta, I think.
she's like a yeah, when she was like, oh yes, I do that, I'm like a naturopathic wellness person, I was like, oh boy, here we go. One of these people.
By the way, I saw that coming a mile away. The Julia Jane thing. It was like
I did too.
that was the
Yeah.
first thought I had when it was like her identity was like
Yeah.
when she started becoming a little bit of a recurring. Like saw her like the second time. I'm like, okay, this is
Yeah,
Julia Jane. I see this being
yeah.
the twist.
Yeah, when I saw her again, I knew immediately, particularly like the like absolute like dead on giveaway was the fact that she's like talking about the Dewey Decimal System.
Hmm.
And I was like, all right, guys, go to like that's what the numbers mean in all the art. Remember the art, and then it's like 15 minutes later when the characters figured out in the plot of the episode. It's like, oh, cool, I'm smart. I had that figured out before they did.
Yeah,
um,
well, And like the actual reveal isn't until very late, like last
Oh, that she
couple
is Julia
episodes.
Jane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like I feel like that's where they kind of missed the mark on that a little bit. Is like because it felt like it was supposed to be this big reveal. It's like
Yeah.
who am I? And then you're supposed to like put everything together then. But meanwhile, I had figured that out a long time ago. I feel like
Right.
most people would, but
Right. But the whole mystery behind that. Yeah, I almost felt like maybe they could have like revealed that earlier and then just had like trailing mystery, like having her teasing Alanka the information of like, oh, how did it all work for you?
or yeah, not even have Alanka know, just have some
Yeah.
reveal like pan over to something on her property that shows that she's Julia
Yeah.
Jane, and then we
Right.
just have a couple more episodes before well, like it's like
Yeah.
almost facade going on, so it's like
Yeah.
it'll give you more of a creepy feeling.
Right. So that then strings instead of stringing Alanka along, but it strings the audience along because it's like, okay, well, something happened, right? Because that's what all the reports say. But she's still around here, so like, what's the deal? What's going on?
Yeah,
Like, what's happening?
and
So
as soon as she's like, "Oh, I'll go there with you," I'll go over at midnight. I'm like, oh. It doesn't sound like good things are gonna come from this.
yeah, sounds to
Um,
me like pretty similar. And then it's like, oh, you didn't say you were bringing people, and it was like, oh, this is creepy. This is really spooky.
And then of course people are just dropping dead. She's like, "Drink it,
Oh,
quick, drink it."
drink it quick. Yeah, drink it. No, you
No.
gotta drink it. It's like, yeah. Meanwhile, it's like a midnight mass scenario where all the four of their ladies are like vomiting,
Hmm.
writhing on the floor.
So you know what I was thinking when the headmistress came down, and then Julia Jane went up all creepy looking as she was going up
Yeah,
the elevator.
yeah. She like did the like
What I was
yeah the
thinking then, I was
crazy
like,
swim.
oh, it's like, oh wait, they're not gonna be able to get back up. Who's gonna know that they're down there? But it turned out there was like a secret staircase to the basement.
Right,
I was like, oh,
right.
okay, because they just cut to like ambulance. I'm like, oh, I thought that would be a bigger deal, but then they explain
Mm-hmm.
it because they explained before and that added to the creepy factor. When at one point it was like it felt like they were gonna get stuck down there. It was like him and the boy,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah. Right.
or the group in general, because the elevator went up and they're like, oh shoot, we can't. They're not gonna be able to call it back down. But then it was Sandra coming down for the ritual. But yeah, I thought that bottom floor, that hidden bottom floor, I liked how that unfolded, the
Yeah.
mystery involved with that, and it was cool. And it was a
That
really
was
creepy element.
yeah for sure.
But yeah, I thought it was really effective. I liked a lot of the characters. There aren't any characters that I can think of that I didn't particularly like compared to the rest. Like I thought they all had their charm, and their
I so
stories reflected their personalities pretty well.
Yeah, I remember I was not just because I thought it was like, all right, I get it. Like it felt like the writing was just really too extra for Anya to, like right off the bat. She's a very strong personality, but I came around on her like really
Yeah,
quick, like
true,
when
true.
she told her story, and I was like, oh, a lot of what she's doing makes sense. I'm like, wow, okay. That was also like a horrifying story.
Yeah,
That's like that was like that might be one of the most, because that felt like a legit horror story, like in a classical sense, whereas like some of the other ones are like sort of like sci-fi horror, some other sort of supernatural kind of elements to it. But like, I mean, that one did technically have supernatural elements. It was to deal with the devil.
yeah.
um but like it's sort of like yeah, splitting your personality. I guess that's like, isn't that the whole premise of that show Severance,
I
right?
don't know.
The split. I haven't watched it because I don't have Apple TV Plus or whatever. I really want to watch that show though. But like that's like about how Adam Scott's character, like it's like in the future you can sort of split your personality between like your work, what you do like during work, and then like you like for your free time, so for leisure.
Hmm.
um it's like to like maximize efficiency or whatever. I know it's sort of like a weird dystopian thing. That's all I kind of know about it. But like that sort of reminded me of that a little bit, where it's like she splits her like her sort of perfect student, perfect ballerina sort of thing, and then for whatever she wants to just go do, the impulses that she wants to just
Sex, drugs, and rock and
give
roll.
into, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Exactly.
She lost her
Um,
virginity while on the couch with her parents. That was a nice
yeah,
scene.
that was that was really awkward. It was funny.
Yeah. By
um,
the way, how did the split? How did she kill one of them in this story? Like you've experienced what the other one experiences. I was like, they're both just gonna die, right? Isn't that how that would work? But it's like, oh no, you killed the other one. But which one are you was the question.
yeah.
And she didn't know which. But I was
Mm.
always thinking, like, how do you kill the other one if you're experiencing what they're experiencing?
I
Like
didn't
this,
experience. You didn't experience
you didn't
it
experience the
completely to the
death.
fullest. Yeah,
But yeah, there's
yeah,
so many cool stories,
yeah.
and
That was like one of the first ones, and that one's like a highlight for me. Um,
I did like the Dusty
us,
one was fun. The serial killer.
yeah, I liked. It felt like a Twilight Zone episode. Was the one that the Japanese girl whose name I can't remember.
Katsuki? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Katsuki? Something like that.
Natsuki.
Natsuki,
Yeah,
yes.
Natsuki. Yeah, her. Yeah, she's already. I like her a lot. She's very cute.
Hmm.
So I like her in general. And also my favorite character was the can't remember characters' names. Alec,
Yeah.
um, the guy who's the guy who falls in love with her, the guy who's in love with her,
A
and then
mesh?
they start a relationship. Yes, he's my favorite
Yeah.
character. Because I was like, yeah, I feel like I relate to him
You
on a
relate
lot
to
of
him, yeah.
ways. Like, if I was like, yeah, I was like, I feel like my perspective, like, if I had a sort of like a terminal illness, like the stuff that I care about and prioritize, family, girls, video games. Usually video games are going on top there for a little bit, and like I like how in one of their confessional meetings is like, I'm the PlayStation's just coming out and I'm never gonna get to play it. you know
Yeah, yeah. Which was interesting. They set the time or the year was at that point.
1994. Yeah.
Because like I kept forgetting that at some points. I was like, when
Mm.
was this taking place again? But then they'd remind you, be like VHS or yeah,
Yeah.
you got the PlayStation early. I'm like, okay, this is where we are.
Hmm.
I think that's actually a clever decision because I feel like with something like this, the internet would have like
Right.
taken it and blown it. Like people would be swarming this place. Like if you got this like secret like Julia Jane got out and there's like mainstream internet exists, then it would be like a tourist attraction almost.
Yeah, that's
So
actually kind of a question that I had. Is like, how exactly did Ilanka find do it? Because Google search engines, from what I understand, didn't really exist at that point.
yeah.
Or
So
they shouldn't have
what did
existed at
they
that
show
point.
her? They showed
So
her looking at something.
yeah, and it could be like because rudimentary web networks and like bulletin boards and stuff like that existed. Um, but I don't think there was. I don't know what I can't. I mean, obviously, I was 3 years old in 1994. This is like 93, 94. So it was like
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess I don't know like specifically like when did Google start. I was like I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure like search engines weren't really around until like the late 90s. At least not in the degree that you could literally like search up and find websites of places. So it was interesting that they even had like a website of this place at all, right? So there's maybe a
Hmm.
little bit of a stretch there in terms of that, but like it's not really a major focus of the show, so it's like you can kind of bend it a little bit. Um,
Well, I
to,
like the framing because it was like the default is to assume it's taking place now, unless they tell you otherwise. You just gotta send it. Oh, it's taking place 2022. And if it was taking
mm,
place in 2022, then a lot of this wouldn't really work for me. It's like the story itself wouldn't work because this whole mystery, you feel like it would have been
yeah,
solved by now or like blown up.
right. It's the thing with like I mean, yeah, the immediacy of like search engines that we have now, like would make it so that like, oh, you just look up something or have a phone or whatever, or Google it or. But like in addition to that, it's like it also the mystery that they're uncovering around the house itself, like the stuff with the cults, and the mass information isn't at their disposal because this is in the 90s. So they have to, so
Yeah,
stuff has to be discovered organically the old-fashioned way through a library,
which
which is
a
like
lot more.
that's really
Yeah, a lot more fun
yeah,
for this little the intrigue behind it. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I like that it's set like it is set in a time where it's like that's not too far removed. Where it's right, like most of the audience can really kind of relate to something like that. Like even like Gen Z can still kind of relate to it to a degree. Um,
Hmm.
they've not known anything but technology, but the '90s weren't as far removed as the '80s. Um, it's also nice to have something set not in the '80s specifically.
Hmm.
'80s is fun, '80s is great. We love Stranger Things, but like '80s is kind of getting, it's definitely starting to be like, all right, it's another thing in the '80s. Here we go,
Hmm.
Um, so it's cool seeing something set in the '90s.
Yeah.
So
And so yeah, I had a lot of fun with this series. Well, fun and a lot of emotions with the series. I
yeah,
feel like it's like the key element of the Flanagan shows is that it's like there's a horror like layer, it's the foundation, but really the driving force is the characters and the relationships. And I love that dynamic here. I liked
right.
the relationship between Sandra and Spence. That was fun. That
That
was
was amazing. That
that was
was
great.
amazing. I like Spencer and his mom. Um, that was a whole great like arc, like of him like confronting his mom. Like I was like that scene is like one of the best.
Yeah.
It was like, so remember like however, so one of the things people criticized about Midnight Mass was like, oh, it's the monologue. This show had some monologues, but most of them were kind of like, I would say, as powerful but condensed monologues.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like, yeah, that's a Flanagan. That's the right there. So that's a it's a good monologue right there. That was a good one. Um, I loved everything with. I love the nurse Mike.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yes.
he
Straight out of Midnight
who
Mass too.
straight out of Midnight Mass. Yep. He was one of my favorite characters. Also, I just love how he loves them,
Yeah.
and yeah, I
And
mean the
there's
fact that
nothing
he has
nefarious about it. All right. It's just
no
wholesome. You know.
very wholesome. Yeah, I like that. Like originally, I was like, oh, is there something weird going on at this house now, or something like that? But it's like, no, he's just like the most like the nicest person. Like
Mm.
he's just a really caring, kind nurse. I really liked. He's a great character. Um,
Yeah, I liked
trying to
Natsuki's
think.
backstory. That was like
Mm,
that reveal right towards the end. There was a lot of fun.
yeah,
Um, and a really interesting way to present a story of someone contemplating or attempting suicide. You know.
yeah. Well, that's what I mean. That felt like a Twilight Zone episode almost. Like there was like it's the two
That
parts here.
was super creepy as that went down too.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that was really
As
eerie. But there's where Henry oh, what's his name?
yes,
He's been in everything Mike Flanagan's made.
yeah,
He's been in all his movies too.
he's there. He's
Um
the dad from Hill House.
Ned from Hill House, but he was also, people remember him very fondly because he was Elliot, the little boy in E.T. when he was a
Yes.
child actor. But now he's like very he's a great actor. Let me just say that. Like
Mhm.
he can be like a horrible, terrible person. And from what I understand, I think he's in Gerald's Game is one of Flanagan's movies that's been very highly praised. And I think he's not a very good person in that one.
Okay.
So I look forward to seeing him in that. But like yeah, he's just a complete like insano. Like he's just like wild and like yeah, sure, whatever. I just killed the
Yeah.
shopkeeper, and she's like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Nah, I'm kidding."
And the woman with him is like equally creepy,
Mm,
and she was the woman from Midnight Mass. She was the
yep.
mother.
Hmm.
So it's like every news story that came up, it was fun. Like it's like, oh, who's gonna pop up now? It's like we had Owen and
Owen
also
shows
the
up.
sheriff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
he was in the story as a mesh in the future.
Yeah,
as
that was
at first it was like a grounded, like nice, like gamer story, and then it just completely just went out the window. It was like, oh, time travel. It's
yeah.
him from the future, and this is Becky from the future. This whole thing. I
Yeah,
loved
that
I
was
loved the little details where like they cast each other, like everybody's playing the main character of their story, and then
mm,
I loved how the details from like real life just get like weaved into their stories as you would if you're just making up a story. And like as they're imagining it, they're imagining like their love interest is their actual love interests or someone they're close to or they have a crush on. In the case
mm,
of Alanka and Kevin and their stories, they
mm.
both are very close to the character they're actually close to in real life. I love the stuff like that.
It's great. I mean, this show is really great. I think it's okay to have something that's different. I don't think I would put it as high, rate it as high as I've rated some of Mike Flanagan's other stuff, but it's okay because this is so good at what it is. Um, and that is a very different tone than some of his other
Yeah.
things, but I think there's still the hallmarks of a lot of his style is still present. I think some of the filming techniques aren't as flashy as they are in some of his other work. Um, it's a little bit more grounded, I guess, in that way. But I think that sort of is. Um, I think that lends itself to the story being told, basically. So
Mm-hmm.
the experimentation with the camera work is seen in the short stories, basically. That's where some more fun stuff happens.
Yeah.
So, um,
And
yeah,
in the over the topness, I just have to say, like, I love the over the topness of some of the stories too. Like the noir one was especially like the dialogue just got over the rails.
it was pretty wacky. Yeah.
But they owned it, you know.
Yeah.
And then like all the characters, it's funny to think about the actors that they get just for these stories, who they have to like do a straight face with, like as this was a serious scene they're doing,
Yeah.
but it's like really this nonsense story. Uh, but yeah, if this is the low bar of Mike Flanagan, which I'm not necessarily convinced it is, like even compared to the other ones, I think it's comparable.
Yeah, like I
but
like I might still put this. I feel like I need to give Blind Manor another shot again. Like I would almost maybe put this above
that's what I was
Manor.
thinking too. But
Yeah,
I'm saying
like
even if this is the low bar, like this is excellent, and it's like he's still consistently. This is a high
yeah,
quality. Is like he's consistently putting out quality products, man.
right. This is still one of the best things I've watched this year. Like like easily, still one of the best things I've watched this year.
I don't have much
I
bad to say about it. It's almost like just the other ones just do so much excellent stuff that
yeah
elevate it, and it's all in this concise story. It's like 10 or so episodes, and they tell their whole story. And this one still has room to grow. There's room to
yeah
do the opposite also, but I mean, I still think by itself as a great product. If this was the only season they did,
yeah. Well, I do look forward to more. I do want to see where some of the plot threads continue to go. I mean, I just want to get more like cool stories from these characters too. I
hmm.
mean, I new people. So yeah, people do die in the season. I guess we can go into tons of detail about that, but and people leave, go off and do things. There's just a lot. The through thread of the season is like we didn't even talk all that much about that, but like that's a whole thing too. So
Yeah,
there's definitely like more to come for the future. Like there's room for more people, more patients to come and make us feel like and feel sad and also inspired. So
hmm.
so Zach, coming back, we had some technical difficulties. Let's just put this in the bag. What do you give the Midnight Club for a rating?
It's clearly between two ratings for me. I think I'll
Oh,
have to settle on one, but it's between the 8.5 and a 9 for me. Like, this is excellent stuff. And like I don't have many criticisms I point to that like it did anything particularly poorly. So, but that being
To me,
said, I gave Haunting of Hill House a 9.5. I gave
yeah.
Haunting of Bly Manor an 8, I think. Then I
Did
gave
you? Oh,
8 or an 8.5, but I think it was like I gave it an 8, you gave it 8.5, something like that.
okay.
I gave
Yeah.
Midnight Mass a 9.5 too.
You
If I was
gave it a
correctly.
9.5. I gave it a 9, I believe.
So like high marks. It's
This
either
is this is I would say this is 8.5 for me.
it's 8.5.
I think it just again it's tough. Because I'm kind of between those two scores as well. Um, I'm more settling on 8.5 because I think that like this still has room to grow. Maybe the next season comes out and I look more fondly back on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the as a product as a whole, this is great. This is fantastic. If this is all we got, I agree with you. This would be a pretty solid entry. I feel like it's just not quite the extra level of like perfection that like a lot of his other stuff tends to have. It sets its tone and it stays in it, but it doesn't necessarily elevate itself out of that at the
Yeah.
end. Whereas I feel like a lot of his stuff just almost transcends its own like its own self, like in terms of like the headiness and sort of what it's discussing. I think this does have some very fantastic like discussion starters, and I feel like it comes to some interesting conclusions and even some it raises some interesting points about like the people dealing with young people having to deal with their own mortality. I think that's really interesting. I think it's important to talk about. It's it's dark. It's maybe type macabre or morbid, but I feel like it's good to sort of discuss or at least have stuff like this out there.
Yeah.
And I feel like this. I want to compare this much more favorably to something like The Fault in Our Stars. I know a lot of people love that. I kind of hate it personally. This is a much better case for like because there's like two kind of little love stories that go on in this. This is like a much better, like more wholesome and like more like I would say beautiful like ideas of like having an element of romance in a story about terminally ill people
Hmm.
because it's not just that. There's a lot more to it than that. I don't necessarily want to completely dismiss Fault
Yeah.
in Our Stars as only being that, but I feel like this has a much like more grounded or more like realistic or less fantastic. It's a lot more like no, this is like being like having leukemia sucks. It's awful. Having like going through all this is like it's indescribably horrible. It's indescribably painful and tragic. Um, but having people come alongside you and sort of like relate to you in that like as the way only people who are in the same sort of kind of scenario could is like I mean it's tragically beautiful. It really is
Yeah.
and so like that in and of itself is just like it sits in that really well. I think like yeah. So
So tough for me. Hmm. I think I'll give it a 9. Okay, I give it a 9 because I think I'd rather look back on something and say I scored it too high than scored it too low. And to me, this is like hitting the emotional parts really well. It was
mhm.
actually moving me. And just in terms of a dynamic, even if you take out the illness element of it, I think
Yeah.
this is a fun friend group. This is like the kind of friend group I would like to be in.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
ride or die. They're like they love each other unconditionally. Like even the ones that butt heads and like are
Yeah.
fundamentally coming from different viewpoints entirely. Like Sandra and Spence, like they're still at the end of the day gonna love each other. And I think they really established those connections really well. And I think the storytelling was done really well, and it's very different from the other Flanagan things, but I think it is done brilliantly in
Mm.
how they presented it. So
And just and just having character growth. Like it's great. I like seeing characters like really come into their own and develop. Um, Even sometimes making choices that are like, oh no, why are you doing that? But then learning from their mistakes, um, or or just coming to terms with certain aspects of themselves, or uh, looking at life in a different way. Like even a like towards the end of their lives, there's still like room for growth and room
Yeah.
um, for them to change and be better people. Um, so yeah.
And it's like I almost wish it was contained in itself. There wouldn't be future seasons in the sense that like as we go on, by the nature of how this group is put together, we're just gonna keep losing more of them,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, that
So
is kind of the nature of it. Yeah,
so it's like I don't know if I
but
want to be in for like 6 seasons in when we have like a completely different group of people, but
yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, that is kind of the point of the club
the
itself. Yeah,
club.
I don't know. I don't know what the intent is like for how many seasons. I know that like the intent was like multiple seasons, but I don't know if there's like a
Yeah.
specific plan in place for we're gonna have 2 seasons or we're gonna have 3 seasons or man, we're just gonna keep doing this until we get sick of it.
Yeah, you
Um,
said multiple seasons. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I didn't even look into anything, so I just presumed a second season based on the ending. But yeah, I hope it's not too many seasons.
I
Uh,
hope not too. I feel like 2 would be fine. I would be okay with just 2.
yeah,
I feel like 3 is kind of pushing it for this concept
especially
because
like
just
how
because
far does the concept go? Like, how much
right.
more can you flesh out at that many seasons in? Like where are we
Well,
going
I
with
mean,
it?
there is there again threads that we still don't necessarily know. We don't really know much about the old man and the lady. We don't know much about that. Um,
Hmm.
Julia Jane got away.
She did get away. How
She got away.
the fact they let that happen?
The gall, the absolute gall of these people for letting that happen. She got away. There's still some like there's still some other there was like another like group of people that lived at the house that they discussed too, that we didn't really go into super much. I mean, there was yeah, so I don't know. There is definitely some mystery elements, some things they can still do, but
Very
I feel like
curious.
dragging it out too much more would be like, yeah, 3 seasons. I think should, if they decide to go for that many, that should be the end. They should not go more than that. I would probably be even better if they only did 2.
Yeah. Well, I'm very
Wrap it all
curious
up.
how it'll be handled because
Mm,
I could definitely see a reality where it's done kind of. I mean, Mike Flanagan you would think otherwise, but just by its nature, I could see it being done poorly if you flesh out some of these things too much to where like
yeah.
because like I
No, I
think
see.
I think the side story with the Julia Jane and all that is nice as a little tiny like side tangent, but if you start going all in on that element, I think it could lose some of its charm.
Yeah.
But
But I
we'll
think
see.
I think it is interesting because like ultimately looking back in the season that thread as a whole, you have the the sort of the house mistress and Julia Jane, science and faith, kind of butting heads again. And that's kind of like an interesting, and that's even like seen in the dynamics of like our characters in the show too. So it's like the kids. So there's a really sort of like yeah, there is an interesting like I guess the larger things a whole because like neither of them are particularly wrong, but they're also not completely right either.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. There's an in between here somewhere. Um, so I don't know. They could do you can do more with that. That's interesting too. Don't know where we would where precisely we're going next season, but
Balls in your court, Flan man. All
yeah,
right, let's
you
see.
got this. You got this, man. We'll watch it.
The
We
Flan with the
love
plan. All
a
right.
plan with a plan.
Surely he has a plan. You think someone with such
Actually, I
concise,
hope
like
so.
tight writing in the past wouldn't just be like,
Yeah,
We'll see how many seasons it ends up being.
Yeah,
He would hope he'd be like
I
have it set.
I feel like they gotta have a plan. Yeah,
But that's a Tarqaron score of 8.75. Okay,
deserving, very
excellent,
deserving.
highly recommended.
Yeah,
And then I thank you for joining us. And the next
yeah,
Mike Flanagan thing will be there for every time.
absolutely.
And we'll
Follow
be
the House of
every.
Usher next year.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be watching it.
Is
So
there like, are they gonna? Is he gonna be doing more haunting of stuff? Also, is that like another thing?
I think he's came out and said that like he's not it's not shelved totally, but like it's taken a backseat to the other projects he's been working on. So,
Hmm.
um,
'Cause, yeah, I mean, I assume that's like that was his vision going into it, was to just do more of that, and then it's just like now he's got a full plate of stuff to work on. But I obviously don't mind because I feel like no matter what direction he goes, I'm here for it. I loved Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. I loved Midnight Mass, and I love this. So, and they're all very different.
mm-hmm.
And I'll be interested. Like the next thing he does, do we get like some of these actors in there? Like, do we get some of the young kids in there? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that'd be fun to add them to the roster, the ever growing roster. But
Yeah. So, thank you for watching. What video would you recommend our viewers watch till the next time?
go check out our review of The Haunting of Bly Manor
Hmm.
for more Flanagan stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really remember everything I said about that in our review, so
That is the low
have to
bar
check it
for
out.
me, and that I still
Yeah,
love that show.
yeah, that
So,
show's still fantastic. So
yeah.
yeah,
Check that out.
okay.
Subscribe to the
Yeah,
channel if you enjoyed. Like the video, leave a comment, hit the notification bell, and click the links in the description for our social media. All right. Get out of here.